On today's episode of Gathering the Kings.
I was taking new steps and leaps forward as my business was growing. And I would say that internal inertia is something you can't teach a person, you can't put it inside of them. And if it's there, you must listen to it and make that the loudest voice in your mind.
You are listening to Gathering the Kings with Chaz Wolfe, featuring fellow 7, 8, and even 9-figure business owners who have real battle scars from business and life, but have prevailed as the king that they are designed to be. We welcome high-performing entrepreneurs to the stage in order to reveal the real of the real on what it takes to build a successful business today. We dissect the good and bad decisions they've made along the way that give a true and accurate picture of the journey of success and how you too can get there. Through this dialogue, you will learn the value of growing your network and surrounding yourself with power players and kings like today's guest. Grab your pen and notebook because we're about to dive in.
What's up, everybody? I'm Chaz Wolfe. I'm your host, Gathering the Kings podcast. Today, I have a treat, a queen coming to the king stage, Moana Dixon. Welcome. How are you?
I'm doing really well, thanks. How are you?
You know, I'm incredible. We were just talking about some different life experiences off air that bring us joy. And so I think we're going to have a great conversation here and maybe get a couple smiles through the process. Moana, what type of business do you have?
Well, I am a furniture designer, maker, and manufacturer. I focus on textile and leather particularly is my skilled craft. So okay. I'm not a wood maker, but I do work with finished craftsmen and, guys who do iron and welding. And then I create all the really delicious soft parts that your body comes in contact with, or full-size pieces that are just made of textile or leather.
Yeah. I love how you described it as delicious. That makes me think of my wife describing my children, through the different stages of life, how they're delicious, but you're 100% right. It's like that feeling that you get where you want to squeeze it maybe.
Yeah. It's, when you're on a long journey or you just had a long day and the only place that you need and want to go is home and you want to face plant into that one thing, I make those things. The face plantable specific items that you need that pillow, you got to hop on that couch, you need that one thing, and that's your comfort zone. That's kind of your foundation.
Yeah, I think that the listener can pick up already so much, and I'm going to try to do my best to delineate language here throughout the show, but what you're dialing into is just something so specific. And but as you said, that every person that heard it goes, yep, I know exactly what she's talking about. I got that one place that I like to sit repeatedly, and I like to cuddle up with that one little thing. And so you hit on several things. You hit on the emotion. You were very, very specific. And so did you have that right away when you started this journey? Did that come over the course of time? Like, how did you have such clarity to that?
Ironically, I had my own COVID long before COVID happened. And I think life kind of happens that way for most of us. I was a VP of sales in the wine and spirits industry. I'd been, building my career in that arena for about 18 years at the time. And I worked on startup brands and built them into acquisition. And the brand that I was working on, we had a tragedy. And overnight, the founder of our company, who also was bringing in all of our financing, died in a car accident. So as one of the top paid people, in the organization, in order to keep my team, I, along with most other members, went down to half pay, but mine was pretty substantial. And being in my home and those feelings of frustration and just, you needed something to change. It was one of those pivot moments that I thought was completely related to my professional career as it was at that time. And I was just trying to figure out how to change my mood. And the thing that I did was I probably at a COVID hour of the day with bottle of wine in hand, opened up a closet and found all of these textiles that I had collected from all of these incredible trips that I'd taken abroad into developing countries where I gathered these beautiful hand-woven things that these tribes women have made. And I was going to make something for myself. Well, today was the day. So I ended up making a set of pillows. That for me was a game changer in my space. Yeah. And my neighbor came up and said, "These are so incredible. Have you considered selling these on Etsy?" And I said, "What in the world is Etsy?" And a small introduction later, and I listed the pillows that I had made for myself. And I think it was like maybe $1,500 worth, because they were really expensive vintage textiles that I just had, cherished. And I thought, okay,
Yeah.
That was cool in a couple of days. I could do that. I can start with squares. And so I started making pillows.
Yeah.
And the thing about pillows is everybody knows, I'm sure your wife has so many of them, you just don't get it. But
Yes.
the two things is that they do really shift a space. It's the quickest and easiest way to kind of change your home environment. You can move them between a bedroom and a living room and the kids' rooms and whatever. But those are the things that support your body. Those are the things that you rely on to lean on and lean into and to support you and give you rest.
Yeah.
And as I really was trying to unpack and consider the value of what that physical item is and does, and kind of how long throughout history it's been an available piece of just a home environment in one way, shape, or form or the other.
Yeah.
And the importance and the value of that just really started to rise for me. And so I founded my company basically that week based on kind of the premise and foundation that this aha that I had, that this one thing really shifted my environment, shifted my mood, and eventually shifted my life, was a good starting point for me. And I spent the following years just learning how to sew the best kind of square to get the best kind of fills, handmade here in Los Angeles. And I just really, I really focused on it as kind of a primary foundation point for everything that I did.
I feel like you could write a whole philosophy book on pillows.
That's kind of funny. Maybe you could, but yeah, it's the bottom line is, and you have kids too, whatever happens in the morning and that home environment and at the end of the day sets the stage for everything else that you do outside of that environment. And that was kind of really what I was fine tuning into essentially, was setting a platform. And now post COVID, I think, that was something that became so present to people.
Oh yeah.
And which was great because my business did very well.
Yeah. I think you've found exactly what you're made for, like literally the switch and what it did for your life. And obviously your business has grown and as you've changed other people's lives, but just the foundational perspective of business, how you leaned into something so functional where a lot of people are like, oh, it's just, I don't know how to do it, or I wouldn't want to sell these, or there's millions of pillows. How could mine be any different? Like so many reasons why you shouldn't have. But yet you did anyway. And so I think that part of the story is just as juicy, from an entrepreneurial perspective of looking in going, wow, like pillows. I mean, who would have known, who would have thunk? And so, I guess my question for you, which is the same as every guest, and I'm going to try to weave this into our current conversation here, but why not why pillows? Because you've already given us that, but why are you still pushing now? Like you've gone through COVID, your business has exploded. Is it still about what you just said, the clarity that you have around bringing this restoration to this piece of people's lives? Or is it more than that now? Or is it different? How has that changed?
I'm going to try to answer this without giving too much away. Obviously, I've matured and grown tremendously. It's been 7 years since I started my company, but I have a really incredible, I think I have a very cool project that I've been working on developing for the last couple of years that ends and begins in a sustainable kind of closed loop system. But I can't give you too many details because
you're gonna leave us cliffhanging. Okay.
Yeah, my first round of financing on this one, developing something that could possibly be very game changing and deliver that same sentiment to people, especially in developing countries or in war times, like the things that we're seeing, in a very rapid, sustainable, and reusable manner, if you will. So I've really leaned even more into the ethos of where the identity that I began, the fingerprint of my company. But most importantly, I was reading a book at the time when I started my company that was a complete disruptor. It was something that landed parallel to my fault line in my life, professionally and personally. And it was this book by a gentleman by the name of Erwin McManus called The Artisan's Soul. And he has one sentence in there that is just tattooed on my heart forever. He says, one who is created creates, basically. That's the imprint of intelligent design, and creates and continues to evolve. But creation is the identity of the core human ethos, if you will, and his perspective, and debatable in a whole bunch of different ways in different contexts. But if you just kind of strip that down to the one foundational point of what we all do have in common, even if you're an accountant, you create magic with numbers. If you're a chef, you can create magic with food and with a steak, or pastry or whatever it is. In every single capacity, what the human being and brain has created out of absolutely nothing is probably the most powerful enterprise that any of us can actually step into. And I think there have been so many times, I know there have been so many times that I've just wanted to quit. I've been so frustrated. It's just pillows. It's just someone's house. It's just, whatever. And the thing that does continue to drive me is what else would I do? And sure, there are a lot of other things that I could do for money, but I'm intended to do something more with my hands, with my life, and with my brain than just, be a recipient of, of a system that doesn't necessarily edify what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
That was kind of,
sorry. You couldn't have said it any better. Just a beautiful set of words there of what entrepreneurialism is. I would say every entrepreneur at some stage in their career, it starts off as, maybe I'm pissed at the man and I want to go do my own thing, or maybe it's out of a curious state where it's like, hey, let me go see what might be able to happen here with these pillows. But it begins. And then there's this journey of like, we got to really iron it out. We got to really want it. But then to your point, we determine, or we can find, if you're looking for it, the greater purpose. And so I just appreciate you sharing that. Even more so, the we're created to create. 100% we are. Every entrepreneur is creating something. We were just off the air talking about my wife, and it's like, that's what we do. We create. We created humans, like other humans. Like this is what we do.
Yes.
So I think you're spot on. I finish up. I reread Think and Grow Rich every fall, every September generally. And so,
Nice.
I mean, it's like, this is exactly what it is. When we press into the limitlessness of whatever it is that we can create, it's such a big thing that a lot of people kind of run from it because it's so big and vast. What would you chime in with that, on that topic there?
The thing that comes to mind to me is always the Wright brothers. And I'm sure you know the story, and everybody probably knows the story pretty well and simply, but I think they were bicycle makers. They were doing all of these other things essentially professionally other than building airplanes. And there was another gentleman who was well financed. These guys had no money. They built their planes, they took them up. They always had crash materials on hand, which would be terrifying for a wife, most likely, but they failed continuously. And there was maybe another person, and probably somebody somewhere else on the planet was probably thinking the same thing at the same time. Yeah. So that's always kind of something that I remind myself when I'm watching other people doing things that are similar to what I'm doing and or with other similar companies. I don't ever look at them as competition, but as a driver, because everything that exists was born out of something that did not exist. And by one or two man's perseverance. And the other thing is that it usually isn't just one man that succeeds on his own. It's usually someone with another partner. But there were two men that elected to envision something being real and had very little resources and finances to actually make it happen. Were willing to kill themselves to do it, which is what entrepreneurship for me at points has felt like, but they could not do it. And they continued until they succeeded. Yeah. And that didn't necessarily mean monetary success, but it meant that the core mission of their soul's journey at that time was to be that was their fingerprint and mark on human history, on this human experience, and shifting it for everybody else because they just showed up for themselves. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what comes to mind when you kind of start. I have that conversation with myself, and my pep talk often includes that environment of communication because my little monkey brain will say everything other than what I just shared with you. Yeah.
Yeah. And so true. But you're also right in what you just shared is that in those moments, what you have to do is remind yourself of those other stories, the inspirational stories, or this thing that I'm stuck in now. It's no different than what I accomplished then. I can do this. And so I just appreciate that perspective.
I've heard there are people who do get lucky, but I think most people will probably say, well, what looked like luck to you was 5 years of something else. But yeah.
That's right. And in business, 7 years, COVID could have swung the business the other way, but instead it was this lightning rod of people being in their homes and wanting their space to be upgraded. And I'm sure that was, you were in the right place, right time, doing the right thing. And I think a lot of people benefit from the quote unquote luck, but years of work positioning yourself before that. I want to transition a little bit to your business decision making. Okay. And I'm sorry if there's a little delay here. We're having this huge storm in Kansas City right now. So I'm not sure if this recording here at all, but a good decision that you made, something that you would do over and over again. It really, really worked out for you.
Let me think for one split second. The only thing that I would say is I just went for it. I I would say that's probably part of my personality. But the one thing that I would encourage in any conversation that I have with any entrepreneur who says, well, I have this thing that I want to do and I'm waiting for the right time, or I'm hoping to get this money or this thing, I just say, stop. I interrupt you, like hand in your face, please. You have to stop. All of this is defeating all of the energy that you have towards something that's being birthed inside of you. Listen to that thing that says go balls to the wall. You don't have everything that you need. You just barely showed up by the skin of your teeth. That's the thing that I think you need to hold on to and be energized by. That I would say being too afraid to just go for it when I didn't have anything. And it was out of need, but it was also out of my soul's hunger. So there was something else that was louder than all of the language of I don't have this and I don't have that. And there were often times that same conversation would come back into play as I was taking new steps and leaps forward as my business was growing. And I would say that internal inertia is something you can't teach a person, you can't put it inside of them. And if it's there, you must listen to it and make that the loudest voice in your mind.
I mean, again, your word choices are so eloquent, but it's so scary. Moana, like, I don't know. And the road is uncertain. It's so scary.
Yeah. And that's, I guess that is exactly what you're here for. And again, kind of going back to, and I think one of the things that Erwin McManus says in this book, Artisan Soul, was he talks about just an old story about a man going into battle and having a quill full of arrows. And he says something to the effect of, if your agenda is to get through this thing, do you want to die with all of the arrows or any arrows left in your quill? Or do you want to pull every one out and actually at least let it go? At least pull back as hard as you can and aim for a target. You may miss, you probably will. And I would probably surmise it best in the words of Les Brown, who says, live full, die empty. Just do all of the things. And I think that the holding back, that's again, a personal journey and concept for everyone to unpack themselves. But I would say that's the bottom line, is just to go for all of the things. That's what you're here for. I mean, that's life.
Yeah. It is. And I think that, even for somebody listening today who has maybe a smaller business, they haven't gotten to some of the maybe markers that you have. I still think that message is for them. They jumped originally, they took the leap. But what I have found is that you have to continue to jump and leap. And saying, because that initial go for it, that inertia that you're talking about is on the inside of us that can't train or teach or deposit into somebody. You have to continually resurface that, because all the circumstances around us, especially when you jump and initially try to go after what that looks like for you, there's all these circumstances that start pressing it back down. And so what would you say to the person listening right now that's like, oh, I get it, I feel it, but it's down in there, I haven't scratched that in a minute? What would you say to that person?
I would say two things. Number one, you're right. Those feelings do come back. So it isn't a one-time journey, and it is not a rite of passage. But if I can take you or all of us back to being a kid, and you told me that you have little girls, and I'm imagining there was a time when your daughter maybe wanted to jump off of a chair or, 3 steps that were higher, and she was afraid, and you encouraged her to go, and she leapt into your arms and you caught her safely, hopefully. I was always the kid.
This was the one time, just one time.
Yeah. Actually, I was the kid always jumping, and my dad sometimes did not catch me.
Yeah.
However, the thing that happens, those butterflies and that joy that she gets in her tummy, and she begins to trust, and those jumps become a little bit more, they become greater and more adventurous, and that excitement. If I could just remind you of what that feels like, because we've all gone through those things in life. And those 2 words that I would put together and encourage you to exchange with one another. I am afraid, to what you really are is excited, because this is something you haven't done before. And the excitement is going to continue to come back, because this journey is going to continue to evolve. And as it does, the jumps and the leaps that you're going to be expected to take will be greater and far more risky, and things get so much more complex. But the reward and that feeling and that joy and that in that part where you leap down becomes greater and better as well at the same time. And fear is another way of convincing ourselves that we are incapable of doing something we haven't done. And being excited reminds us that there are always things we haven't done. I don't know what's going to happen in this conversation 3 minutes from now. And I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow as much as I could plan. So going back to my first sentiment, you have to go for it and learn to trade out words that hold you back with words that encourage you.
Yeah, so good. I think the listeners already gotten all that they came for. If they've been paying attention even a little bit, they should probably go back and listen to this again, and definitely not for the things that I've said. You've been incredible. Okay, so what about a bad decision? What did you do that was just like,
where do we begin?
Yeah, seriously.
This could be my own Esther Perel podcast. I have no idea. There's been so, I look at it this way now, knowing what I do know about business. I did two things, I think, very just unwisely. One of the things was I did finance my business 100%. I put it on my own credit cards and things like that. And I didn't know about grants. I didn't want to take someone else's money. That was also a fear element. I didn't know whether or not someone should put their money and invest in me. Looking back tax-wise, and as you start understanding your books and the nature of your business, I also didn't pay myself for the first, and I didn't file my corporate taxes until like 2 years in as well. So I was a late learner on that lesson.
Yeah.
The one thing you cannot write off is your time, but you can write off everybody else's time and everything else that you pay. And I think just the technical details of business and the financial nature, those things, as I've learned to understand them now at this point, were just technical mistakes that were maybe kind of it was technically my sophomore run at a business, but things that I would really encourage a person to not do is try to find grants. There's so much money available and out there, especially for female entrepreneurs, and especially right now post-COVID for startups and enterprises that are doing, from creative to technical endeavors. There's money on the table for every kind of business and in individual pockets. It's not like you would be fighting with me for, let's say, a podcast or an app.
Right.
In my space, we might be fighting for a marketing, grant, but they're really geared towards specific types of businesses. And there's just so many resources. The internet is just a gold mine, and you just have to have the fortitude to go and dig. So I would say, look for money because it's there, if that's one of your fear elements. And and make sure that you value your time. And especially because if you don't, nobody else will.
Yeah,
the IRS.
Exactly. The phrase that you just said there, you can't write off your time. You can write off what you pay, though, through other people, which is an incredible mindset shift. I think that the listener right now, generally speaking, pre-7 figures, doing a lot themselves. And I hope that hit home for them, because I can even tell in your face right now that you were remembering some of those moments or years like it was for me, all the things I was doing myself.
Years. And then all the things you say, why would I pay someone to do that at this price when I could do it myself? Right. And you really just have to put the value proposition on the table. What is my time worth? And you really actually have to calculate and the way that it works for me is, what could I do in 1 hour? If nobody bothered me, if nobody called me, if I had 1 hour to generate income or to find money, I could apply for 3 grants online. I could reach out to 5 clients. I could have 3 phone calls technically that took 15 minutes, or make 15 phone calls of follow-ups in order to generate money and bring resources back in. And depending on whatever it is that you do, that could be between, let's say in 1 hour, I could possibly very easily generate, let's say, a grant. Right. Or even if that's $500 or $250, that now becomes the marker of what I charge per hour in my mind bank.
Right. Yeah, for yourself. And so therefore anything less than that, you can't hire you for that task.
Yes. And unfortunately that, I've also had to earn my wage as my time has gone on. But even if it's just $100, whatever that is, because nobody just has money to burn and throw away. And especially when you're starting a business, that's the last thing that you have to burn. But your time, if you just think about how to kind of say, okay, instead of running this errand, could I possibly send an Uber to pick it up, or all the other things that you can do, the task rabbits and all the little small fee things that add 10% or 15%. Those are the things that I always go for every time.
Yeah. I mean, in essence,
they free up my time.
Exactly. The solution that you're really giving to the listener, no matter how big or small or how many resources they have, is if you, particularly the entrepreneur, can do something in lieu of this thing. Right. And so I think that's where a lot of breakdown and mindset comes for entrepreneurs, is they think, well, if I hire this, I have time for that, I'll just do it myself. And you go, no, pause. If you weren't doing this, could you go make the sales call or follow up with a client or a strategic partner or a pot or whatever the action is in that moment that's benefiting you at a bigger scale potentially? That is what you go do. You don't go sit on the couch. You don't go take a vacation. You don't just spend the money to have somebody else do it for you. You leverage the higher, activity that only maybe you can do, or maybe that you're better suited for. Would you add anything, or would you agree with that?
Yeah. And I would say sometimes in those moments, you're so overwhelmed and stressed that even if you had an hour, you're just not productive with it. But if you can,
Yeah, it's true.
if that's the case, because I've been there a lot, especially during COVID when getting employees and all the supplies and everything was breaking down, there were often times when I just had to unplug what was going on in my life. And, the cool thing about the internet is everybody, you get to spend time with the greats. So I would unplug and I would go onto YouTube and I would listen to a great podcast or a TED talk, and I would reset my mind frame. And sometimes, as of late, things are always challenging. I've had to do that maybe 2 or 3 times a day. And if I can't actually get in the place of working out or meditating, that's the third thing on my list, is to feed my brain something that my subconscious will pick up and reframe how I go about everything that happens after that 1 hour.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd say,
I might add in there too, maybe
productive.
adding a nap with some great pillows,
And then there's that. You should definitely face plant Superman style into your bed. Yeah.
That's right. Okay. What process do you have now around decision making? Obviously, you've been uber successful in all of this. We've talked about some of your mistakes and some of the good choices. What does the decision look like for you in today's world?
And funny enough, I use Tim Ferriss's fear setting process a lot. So I have to write things down. And I'm very much a perfectionist and just a highly competent person in a lot of areas. And I expect that all of those areas are excellent. So you could probably say that I come with a sidecar of overachiever and anxiety. And so for me, I will without create massive storylines around all of the worst case scenarios and spiral completely out of control in a matter of 15 to 20 minutes, if left alone with my problems.
Sure.
And what I learned from Tim Ferriss, if you haven't seen his TED talk, it's a short 15 minutes, but he basically just plays what if, and you write it down on paper. What's the problem that I have? Give me 2 or 3 possible worst case scenarios. And what if one or all of those things happened? Is there any possible recovery from that? And also, so what? And I think what you do kind of boil down to at the end of this exercise is that more often than not, most of these things are so what, or they're pushing me to do something uncomfortable. Like during COVID, I had vendors that I just simply could not pay. And the anxiety of calling them or not paying them was 10 times harder than just picking up the phone and saying, Mario, I know that you have a family-owned business and everybody's going through stuff. I can't pay you, but I'm telling you that I will. And I don't know when that is. And they continued to let me borrow, if you will, some goods and supplies that I needed, which I didn't expect. They said, it's just enough that you called, do you need anything today? And sure as, enough I did. And I was able to get some of the things that I needed, but only because I actually had to write it down on paper, because I already felt that I burnt the bridge in the relationship. That was what I was buying into, my story. But when I actually mapped the story out, the worst case is, it ends up in collections somewhere. And at the end of the day, but if I wanted to preserve the relationship, was there anything I could do to mitigate and or to do better? And almost every single time there was. And also almost every single time, the worst case scenario kind of ended in, so what? I'll survive.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not going to kill me. I cannot tell you how quality of an answer that is. We have some incredible guests on the show here. We're over 200 at this point, but the reality of that answer, and I'm not just tooting your horn here. I listen to a lot of very successful people, and I've asked that same question to a lot of people and a lot of great answers. One of the best answers I've heard. Thank you. Okay, let's go to the speed round.
Okay.
And in the speed round, first, I want to know about your tracking. There's lots of things to track inside your business, but if you can only pick one that you track forever and ever, what would that one thing be?
Cost of goods.
Ooh, okay. And why? What does that do for you with the rest of the story if you know that one piece of information?
It gives me absolute flexibility in times of difficulty to be able to lower my prices and generate greater income by and or creating products for the masses versus elite. It allows me to flex. And you know how to very quickly.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, and that's really the point of that question, is to know whatever that trackable metric is for you, to be able to, when you know it, like, how do I adjust quickly? How do I make the move? How do I win today, tomorrow?
Mhm.
That might look different.
Yes,
So
completely. And it always does, especially if there's anything the last few years has taught us. You need to know where you can, carve some fat and enjoy the fat when you can get it.
yeah, that's right. What book would you recommend for a six-figure business owner specifically, if you can?
Very simply, for every human being who I think should be a six-figure business owner, The Four Agreements. That's my book that I read every year, over and over and
Okay.
over.
Yeah. Okay. And so why? What's your main takeaway from that book?
Even just starting the beginning, just the power of your words. I think we've talked a lot about that, how powerful language is and how much it'll influence and change everything that you do. Operating with integrity just means that people are crappy in business more often than not, doesn't mean you should be. And just because
Yeah.
the guy that looks like he's cheating you down the street looks like he's more successful than you are, you die with yourself at the end of the day. And so I think just honoring some of those fundamental, core values and always doing your best without question also doesn't mean my best is actually my best. Sometimes my best is just my best today.
Yeah.
And you really just have to learn to honor those things, and just powerful.
Yeah. No, it's super powerful. And also it gives you space to be where that is today, and then also permission to
Yeah.
do it better tomorrow. There's a double-edged sword there. That's incredible. Okay. What do you think about intentionally networking or masterminding with other entrepreneurs?
Absolutely. I just started a new group with four of my closest and here in Los Angeles. It's especially now a lot of people, I've worked from my home for pretty
Right.
much my entire career, but now in a creative environment and especially post COVID, I think a lot more people do understand this. You end up just talking to yourself kind of most of the time, even if there are
True.
people that are your employees, sometimes they're younger, they're not necessarily in your same mindset. I think it's imperative, even if you can't or don't have a mastermind group, like I said earlier, you can hang out with the masters all day. It's a one-way conversation, but on the YouTube, and you
Yeah.
can have great
Yeah.
friends now, like Oprah and the Tim Ferrisses and all these other people that you can actually listen to. But I think
Yeah.
it's bar none one of the most important things. I think your network really is your net worth. And the exchange of ideas is one of the most important things that we can do as humans.
Yeah. Yeah. That exchange of ideas, at least from my experience, personally, I value it, obviously, just because I've grown to know the value of it. But the person listening here, like right to you right now, and hearing, oh, the value of the exchange of ideas. Oh, okay. Well, like, it sounds cool, but like, what does that really do for me? Because you and I, over the course of time, you're around one person, you watch one video, and it goes ding, and it changes, it shifts something so large in your business. And it wasn't even necessarily the idea sometimes, but it was that thing that you heard or that idea that he or she was doing. And then it just correlated some things for you in your business, and it made a shift for you. Maybe speak to that right now for that person who's like, I've never experienced that. I don't know what you're talking about. Sounds nice.
What I would say is one of the gals that's in my mastermind group, and again, it's a very small circle. She always says, as I'm explaining a problem or a situation, even if I do my Tim Ferriss thing, I'll say, well, here's what I'm working with and what I'm up against. And she'll always say, is there a third door? And the reality is that when another person is outside of the problem and can address or even encourage you to think of something differently, it can change absolutely everything. And the reality is that most of our problems are not just our problems. We sort of all recreate a lot of the same things in different ways based on, whatever the foundational kind of like core issue is.
Yeah.
But the thing is that we are so much more alike. And the truth is somebody has gone through that same issue and has resolved it and or has resources and or might say, I just went through that and I have the perfect, setup for it. And I have the person that can help you through that or whatever the issue is.
Yeah.
There's just, I think that really finding community in one way, shape or form, even if to your point, it's just listening to something again, because you don't have community in the moment. I would think that that's the most valuable thing that any person can do in any business enterprise without fail.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to press in. Even where the mastermind idea comes from. You've got YouTube, or we've got YouTube now, but in Think and Grow Rich, he had to do it in his mind,
Right.
And so we can at least create some sort of relationship with the Oprahs and the Tim Ferrisses, like you said, via YouTube. And so there's this incredible opportunity that today's entrepreneurs have, even by listening to a podcast like this. And so they can create these moments of and to be able to go implement. If you only had 1 hour to work on your business each week, 1 hour each week, and you run it successfully like you do now, what would you do in that 1 hour to successfully run your business?
I would, I didn't actually think about this one and all the questions that you've asked. The first thing that came to mind is actually, and I think I said it earlier already, what I would do in that 1 hour. I would either, depending on my mood, if I was like really like pumped up, I would do that exact thing where I would sit down and I would say, how can I generate X amount of dollars in 1 hour? Go.
Yep.
And I would sort of like mind bet myself. I'd be like, okay, if I do this, then I could do A, B. And if it's just, I'm having a really rough day and I'm not motivated to do that, I would go in the opposite direction, 100% towards the self-care and feeding my brain body so that I can show up more effectively on the back end of that hour.
Yeah, that's incredible. Okay. Last question, Moana. If you could whisper in the younger Moana's ear, what would you say?
I would say you've survived 100% so far. You're going to survive 100% of everything else. It's all going to be okay.
Yeah.
No matter what.
Yeah. No stress, no anxiousness, no worry.
Yeah. Yeah. And if I could think about that a little bit more, I would probably say that you're greater than you allow yourself to believe. Just go for great.
Yeah.
And I would say that just all of the stresses of life and all the challenges and all of the things that do confront a business owner or a person in general, it's so easy for us to be our own worst enemy and to think, how I'm not going to survive this or I'm not going to be able to start a business if I don't have all of these things. And if you just take the greatness proposition that you're here for a reason, and that may and will change and evolve as you continue to go, but go for that. Yeah. Versus the smaller end of the spectrum, I would always encourage myself to do that.
You've been created. What are you creating?
Sorry, could you say that again?
I said, you've been created. What are you creating? To take some words from the great Moana Dixon.
Well, I believe that I am creating a more sustainable way for the human body to experience the proposition of rest. Just like I shared with you, after food, clothing, housing, every single person inside of that house, even if it's a shack, needs a place to put their body. And I think that rest and restoration is the other primary function of a home and what prepares us to go out to the world. So it is my personal belief system that every person, every body deserves to rest and have a place to do that. So I am working on creating and shifting, like I said, some part of our global perspective on how we make those things, at what prices and what they're made out of and that kind of thing.
Yeah. I have thoroughly enjoyed our time. How can the listener connect with you? Whether they want to buy some incredibly handmade designer pillows and other pieces that you're making, or maybe they want to jump in on this sustainable international global movement that you're on, or maybe they're just an entrepreneur that wants to pick your brain a little bit more. How can they find you?
Well, my website is huntedfox.co. I think .com gets you there anyway, but you can reach out to me through our website. And of course, we're on the Instagrams and all of the other fun things. But, and I would say that I do make a lot of accessible products as well, not just all designer and overpriced, but they are all made by hand here in Los Angeles. So we've kind of got a lot of great stuff, and definitely a lot of, I tend to design for men a lot in most of my projects. And so I have a lot of really cool masculine stuff too. So it's a great place.
Very cool. Well, I have an upstairs loft that has some elk and deer and a pool table, and that's about it. Like, I need some major help. So I'm going to be checking out the website. Maybe I'll be texting you on some ideas. Maybe we can get some of your products in the man loft over here.
I sure hope that you do. It's my favorite.
Yeah, perfect. Well, you've been absolutely a blessing here today. I think for many people, I think that the lives that'll be changed. That seems so surreal that through a podcast somebody could be changed, but you gave some honest, very, very good stuff here today. So thank you for that. And we'll put all your connections and stuff in the show notes so that people can easily find you and connect you to you. And we just wish you nothing but success, blessing on your trip coming up. And of course, all of your business and your team. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. It was a really great conversation. I appreciated it and enjoyed it.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening to Gathering the Kings. We hope you got a ton of value today and learned a thing or two about taking your business to 7 figures and beyond. If you desire more and want a community around you to help you get there, I want you to go to gatheringthekings.com. That's gatheringthekings.com. And I want you to apply for our next Becoming a King 90-day intensive. We are extremely exclusive by nature as a group. What that means is that we're really wanting only the entrepreneurs who take their business and targets super serious to apply. So if that's you, you think you got what it takes to level up your business, I want you to go to gatheringthekings.com and apply. And we will see you on the other side.